The Marine Corps is under fire currently because a Marine web page, community page, has been found out to be sending back and forth photos between members of female Marine members naked and in sexual compromising situations, and accusations of stalking and harassment. The big question is this just boys being boys and it needs to be stomped out, or is this a bigger issue going on that needs to be addressed from a larger perspective? Here's a Salty Seaman's opinion. Now, if you're not aware of the story, go Google the story from Marine Times. There was a Marine community page, completely unofficial, that was Marines being Marines, hanging out, having fun. A group of them apparently decided to start taking photos of their quote-unquote conquests, which for the most part were fellow Marines who were women, and giving them to each other, and Marines started figuring out who these girls were when they weren't specifically told, and there was a lot of stalking and harassment for their supposed behavior, merely by having sex with another Marine. The worst thing in the world. Now, I think most people who, hear the story on the surface, of course, immediately are like, these people are fucking assholes, and, they have no respect for privacy, and they're doing this kind of bravado bragging, is in an inappropriate place and causing harm to these people. And of course, this should be kind of singled out and dealt with. But there's a lot of people also defending it as boys being boys, and these girls should never let themselves get in this position to begin with if they didn't want to be on Facebook or wherever. There's some issues in lying in there, and I think it kind of reflects on a bit of a culture, not just the Marines, but military-wide. And I can speak from the Navy side because, I've seen it there too. But having worked with Marines on and off my whole career, especially my last 3 years, being on a Marine base, it's definitely something I feel is a bigger issue there than about anywhere else I've seen. And, that's not to denigrate the great things Marines do, but there does always appear to be just a very lesser appeal idea about women, whether it's, female Marines, who get their own nickname, they're Wookiees or Wooks, and even the ones who aren't in the service, the dependents of male Marines are looked at as dependas or dependopotamuses. They're only wanting to be married to a Marine because he has Tricare and BAH, and they can't wait to trap some Marine into a relationship so they can get all this wonderful bennies, because everyone is, there's no other reason to marry a military person. And, you got to think about like that. Do those things happen? Of course they do. Just like people get married to get out of the barracks or off the ship. It happens. And I think it's a bit unfair to like everyone, but like you're going to get a stereotype and it's going to be this sweeping thing. And, the Marines are just the biggest about pressing this. Like I say, go on my own experience. I joined in the mid-90s. The ships were just going, not just supply and support ships, but all ships were going, having a mixed crew. I was on one of the pilot ships, the Blue Ridge, about a year after females started integrating. And that was definitely one of the things I started hearing about right away. This denigration of female service members, that were, causing the, accomplishment of mission to, be destroyed because of their presence. They couldn't lift and do all the heavy things, and they complained, and they had their own medical issues. And, the biggest, of course, if anyone ever gets pregnant and you're serving on a ship, you're just, you've got the big scarlet letter on your uniform there, because the first assumption is you did it on purpose to get out of a deployment. You wanted off the boat. This never comes into effect with the hundreds of other guys who will try to get off the boat for a deployment, like claiming mental issues, or all of a sudden deciding to see this DAP about their drinking problem because hopefully they can get in the alcohol bin for a couple months, which is preferable to deployment, or some kind of medical issue they've never complained about before. They're really trying to get themselves pushed off. Those guys are looked at as heroes. It's like, oh man, you managed to escape getting on deployment, man. You bad lucky dog, you. Female does it for pregnancy is like typical woman in the military is like looking for the easy way out. Blah blah blah. There's a mentality there. The military culture has a mentality, and it's very overwhelmingly masculine, because that's where we come from. That's what the military traditionally is. And only in the last 20, 30 years, we've slowly started integrating females more into the full military role. And there's gonna be backlash. There's just, there is a culture and just an idea in there, and to a lot of people's minds, females just don't fit, and it doesn't matter what it is. Now, you get to the idea of, sending a picture or letting someone take a picture of you in a nude or a sexual position, and you do it willingly. There's the idea that, well, since you agree to it, like, the other person has the right to do whatever with that they want. I would disagree with that. I would say, like, no, that there's an implicit permission there. Is like, no, this is between me and you, and unless I say, like, yeah, go ahead and show it to everybody, I don't care, then you should either ask or have implicit permission before you show it to anybody else. I don't care if it's your buddy in the barracks room sitting next to you, and you're just showing your phone over to him, like, oh, like, look, see what she sent me, ha ha ha. Like, you shouldn't even been doing that unless she says it's okay. Like, it's basic, throwing down yes or no's. It applies to everything. And it's not new. It's like everyone's like, well, it's because of social media, which has definitely made it easier and more widespread, but it's not new. Back on my ship in the 90s, we didn't, digital camera formats hadn't really got to where it is today, especially now with phones. If you took pictures of a girl on the ship you were with, or a girl out in town, or some girl in a Liberty port, and you wanted that stuff developed because it was film, you take your chances out in town somewhere where the guys are probably, if they don't just refuse to do it, they'll probably, they're making copies for themselves for their little collection. And I can tell you, because even though I wasn't in media back then, I was friends with those guys. The ship's photographers who you went to as a hookup, like, hey, develop this special film for me. They kept copies of the good stuff. They even had a whole box of them going back to the 70s. And so absolutely nothing new. Just the format in which we disperse it back. Of course, with that back then, it was kept very small, but at the same time, there was people who never wanted their nude bodies thrown out there, that also have been looked at by decades of photographers, Navy photographers and their friends looking at these, and God knows who spreads it. If they manage to get a hold of a negative or whatever, that could lead to really bad times. So, it was still wrong back then. It just wasn't to where it is now. Like, we have just an easy, take a photo with your phone and you can upload it anywhere within an instant. It's people can get identified, even if you say, like, well, I didn't identify her, I just said this is a girl I was with. There's other people on your base who's going to know immediately who that is, and being a small Marine community page, they're immediately going to, like, hey, this is so and so, this is Corporal Johnson, works over at whatever, and all of a sudden she's on fire for having what was supposed to be a private moment with somebody who just couldn't help but brag. And it gives fire when all this comes up and there's a complaint that, like, oh, well, women can't handle the rigors of being hazed by a military service for their private time. It's like, okay, I mean, that's, I think a little, I think that's your sexism showing. It's like there's no other way to approach that situation other than they should tough it up and get over it. Same thing as, like, every guy in the service would immediately be okay with that if some pictures of them got out, and some women are okay with it and some men are okay with it. Like, but if you don't do it without permission and you don't, person unaware they're about to be put on blast for this shit, it's, you're fucking with someone's life, they're like, their whole life is like, and then they're, if they dare complain about it, everyone's going to, yell at them and make threats and, make their life completely uncomfortable because they're rocking the boat because they didn't just suck it up and take it, like, oh, you got exposed and you're, this terrible person who dared to get nude before their boyfriend or person they're fucking because they just thought it was between them. I just don't buy that. I think just, basic human decency is just like, whenever I have a relationship with someone, it's between me and them, even if they send me naughty photos, it's not something I'm just going to go out and share with everybody, like, oh, look at this. It's like, it makes you seem cool and hip and you're the cool guy in town because, like, you ended up with, like, this really hot girl from from your shop or whatever. It's like, no, you're an asshole. You're trying to defend your self-esteem, and this is the only way you can bring it up. It's like, yeah, you're fucking over somebody else. So, but again, this is more indicative of an overall just sexist problem the services have. They just do. I've dealt with in the Navy, and like I said, it feels like the Marines are even worse. And I'm sure, 98, 99% of them aren't doing this shit. But I guarantee you right now they're going under like a billion hours of just briefs and, sexual proclivity briefs on, rape and propriety and harassment and stalking. And probably they just got done with doing it on their normal annual GMT, and all of a sudden now everyone's got to redo it, and you've got special guest stars, and you're hanging out past Friday, to take these briefs at like 1600, and it's like I don't fucking do this. Like, why is it my fault that all these assholes did this shit? And now my feet are being held to the fire, and that's just what happens in the military. A couple people fuck up. In this case, I mean, there's a bunch, but it was military-wide, Marine-wide. But I guarantee you every single Marine is now feeling that burn. And, the overall majority didn't do anything wrong, and now they could feel the brunt of it. And that's what sucks about this stuff. If people could, think twice before they do anything like that seems a bit out of line. And, unless you were raised as this horrible person, you should know this shit's fucking out of line. It should come to you naturally. You're not only fucking the person you're showing the picture of, but now you're fucking all your fellow Marines. Navy support groups too, just have to go through all this training and have this microscope on them because you had to go brag, you had to go be misogynist and this sexist jerk off who, couldn't keep pictures to himself and figures like it's more of a conquest than a relationship. Whatever you feel about it, this is where it led to. So congratulations. I just think it's bullshit. Keep your fucking private shit to yourself. Don't be broadcasting it. You're gonna piss off everybody in the world. You're gonna get your entire military branch in trouble. So if you don't believe in the whole thing like equality for men and women in the military, at least use common fucking sense for what you're doing. Because I mean, this is bullshit, and this affects everybody. So knock it the fuck off. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. I'm a salty seaman, and peace.